Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Linden Oaks Parent Series. My name is Kim Reyes. I am from our Linden Oaks Marketing Department. Tonight's webinar is Goodbye Summer, Hello Anxiety, Helpful Strategies to Transition Your Teen Back to School. And our tonight's speakers will be Dr. Laura Kohler and Kristen Olden. If you have any questions at all throughout the presentation, select the chat icon in the gray toolbar and ask your question. Our speaker will answer your questions during the question and answer session today or throughout the presentation, whichever they feel comfortable doing. But definitely please feel free to ask those questions while the presentation is going. After the presentation today, we do ask that you fill out a short evaluation on our speakers. The evaluation will open in the polling section on the right-hand side of your screen. As a reminder, the poll will only be open for 5 minutes, but if for any reasons it doesn't open up on your end, that's totally okay. No need to email us that you didn't get to fill it out, but if it does open properly, please do take a few minutes to get that answered. If you are interested in our other upcoming Parent Series webinar, the next one will be September 20th, A Parent's Guide to Mental Health System, led by Jerry Lau. And then you can also scan the QR code for the other upcoming ones for the rest of the year. And then just to kind of go over what we do at Linden Oaks, again, and what do we treat? So we do see adults, adolescents, and seniors starting from 12 and up. We treat depression, anxiety, addiction, eating disorder, PTSD, and other mental health concerns. We do have a full continuum of care here at Linden Oaks. A lot of the times, particularly with someone who may be experiencing a mental health crisis, people don't really know where to seek help or where to send that person. You know, the advantage of calling a hospital like Linden Oaks is that we can assess an individual who may need any type of treatment level, so whether that be inpatient to outpatient therapy. And we are open 24/7. So again, we can find treatment for anyone who is immensely acute, so anyone who's having active suicidal thoughts, anyone with psychosis, to someone who is coming in for the first time to treat, you know, depression and anxiety. Essentially, we are a one-stop shop for your mental health needs. And just some locations for us. Again, we do have our inpatient location in our Naperville on West Street next to our Edward campus. Again, that's our 24/7 location. And on our outpatient programs, we have them in our Naperville Mill Street, Plainfield, St. Charles, Mokena, Hinsdale, and Woodridge houses our eating disorder programs. And then on the screen is the insurances we do accept. Again, most commercial insurance. And then for Medicaid, the only ones we do accept is the Illinois All Kids, and they do have to be under the age of 21. Are you or someone you know feeling anxious or depressed? If yes, there is a QR code that you can scan and follow to take a quick mental health assessment, and then it just kind of helps you direct to what kind of levels of care that we have. And again, just looking for more information, if you follow this QR code, it'll take you to our website, and again, just kind of give you services about Linden Oaks. Or you can email lindenoaksmarketing@eehealth.org. Again, if you are interested to learn more about services that Linden Oaks have, I'll be more than happy to chat with you or anyone that you know who is interested in learning more information. And then I will go ahead and hand it off to our presenters. Again, it's Dr. Laura Kohler and Kristen, and the floor is all yours, ladies. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Kim. All right.
Oops, sorry, Laura. I'll go ahead and switch over to your PowerPoint.
Perfect.
Thank you. There we go. And you should be good to move it.
Is it?
Oh, I'm not sure why it's doing that. Let me go ahead. There you go, if you want to try that again.
Nope.
Sorry about that. Let me just take that off.
Is this it? Here we go. Right?
And then go ahead, Laura, and give it a try again.
All right.
There we go.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Kim. So Chris and I are going to start off with some introductions. Kristen, you want to go first?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Kristen Olden. I am a social worker and work in the adolescent anxiety program. I've worked at Linden Oaks in total about 2 years now. And Laura, I know we were going to kind of go over a little bit of a fun fact, just kind of stemming it to school anxiety and thinking back to school. We wanted to go over how we experienced anxiety while we were in school, whether that be elementary, junior high, or high school, or even college. So I would say for me, in high school, anxiety showed up, specifically social anxiety, getting nervous to do speeches, getting kind of dry mouth, freezing up, and really rapid heart rate, things like that. So funny that I'm doing this presentation.
I feel like this is a full circle moment.
Exactly.
So again, my name is Laura Kohler. I'm a psychologist. I've worked at Linden Oaks for 13 years. I'm the manager of the anxiety services. I started out as a clinical therapist like Kristen in the adolescent anxiety program. And then after about 7 or 8 years is when I became a manager. So I've been in the anxiety world for a long time. And like Kristen, I have my own history with it. When it comes to school, when I was in 5th grade, I refused to go to school because I had separation anxiety from my mom. And I ended up getting some treatment and doing some of the same exposures that we do today in the anxiety program. And so I think that, you know, having a history can really help with the compassion that we have because we remember what it was like as well. And so that's a little bit about us.
All right. So some of the objectives that we'll be touching on today are learning practical strategies to prepare your teen for going back to school if they haven't already. I know some of the districts have, but even for future years. Learning how to recognize when anxiety about school becomes a problem, and learning skills to help your teen manage school anxiety.
So let's dive in. So we're going to start with the very first one, which is to learn the practical strategies to prepare your teen for going back to school. So some of the things when school starts is, I think, you know, one of the things that's really important is talking about it, creating a culture at home, you know, that it's okay to express yourself, talk about it, you know, have your kid be used to you asking questions like, you know, about school or what are we most anxious about? Is there anything new this year that's going to happen? So I have an 8-year-old, and so we've been doing that. He doesn't start school till Monday, and so we've been doing a little bit about that. And one of the things that he's anxious about is that he has never met this teacher before. It just, I think, happened to be that, like, when he was in kindergarten, he had some interactions with the first grade teacher and so on, and this is his very first one. And so we're going to meet the teacher actually tomorrow night because of that. But school supply shopping can be a great place for this too, you know, just to get that conversation started, the ball rolling. You can see how your child behaves when it's time, you know, to go to the store. Are they really excited about it? Is it starting to show some anxiety there? And I think sometimes even the school supply list itself can sometimes be telling of some of the things they might do that year when, depending upon what they're asked to bring. Setting goals for the year can be really helpful. You know, I think that the goals can be academic and they could be more social related, you know, whether it's joining a club after school even, but being able to set goals can help give a vision for what we're moving towards. So if we do start to feel anxious, then this is why I'm going to be willing to go to school feeling anxious, is because of these XYZ goals. Establishing expectations for the year with consequences, and consequences, that term kind of gets a bad rap. Consequences really just means good and bad, or neutral even. But establishing expectations for the year, like ahead of time. So if your child has a history of maybe refusing to go to school or being tardy, struggling to get up in the morning, you know, establishing right from the start that this is what the expectations are, and then these are what's going to be the consequences if you don't do that. And then also establishing the expectations for when are we going to stay home. You know, so for the most part, we typically say, we call them the big three of like a fever of over 100, chronic vomiting or like chronic diarrhea are typically the times that we would stay home. And so kind of establishing that expectations, or if we, you know, have been to the doctor and we have something contagious, you know, like strep or pink eye, you know, things like that too. Of course, we would stay home for that as well. But over time, the like file in our brain of like when to stay home tends to get longer and longer of the reasons to stay home. And so being consistent with the school routine is really helpful. So whether this is, you know, like, so for my son, we're starting some of this now, or during winter break, spring break, staying emotionally regulated is very critical to helping with anxiety in particular. So being able to keep our emotions kind of level and being able to understand them. And so things like sleep and even what we're eating, making sure we have a morning routine. If your school hasn't started yet, you could start that now. We would recommend starting it a little early. So then that way it's more of a culture at home when school does start. If school has started already, that's okay. It's never too late. And so you can, you know, start doing these things right now, be very clear what they are, limit screen time. You know, we often recommend, you know, not charging electronics in the kids' room, and to instead have like maybe like a charging station, something like that can be really helpful. So then it's not even like taunting them sometimes having that electronic there. Driving or walking to school, again, whatever that kind of routine is. So if you walk to school or take the bus, you know, maybe just starting to talk about that if it's the bus, and like the route that it goes, if there is some anxiety about riding the bus. Possibly walking your schedule ahead of time, especially if they're in high school. High schools are very large, and, you know, it can take a few times to understand the route that you're going to take. Meeting the support team ahead of time, if necessary, can be helpful. And so, you know, whether that's the teacher or perhaps a social worker, guidance counselor, especially if they're new. You know, I don't think necessarily, depending upon the level of anxiety and the reason why, I think this is something that can happen in the first, second week of school too. But rather than waiting for, you know, the child to struggle with something and now they have to go down to this like social worker or guidance counselor that they don't even know who they are, I think can be really tough. So having that person just set up a quick meet and greet for 15 minutes can make a world of difference. And then some of the other strategies is like setting the morning up for success is a really big one. I think sometimes when people wake up, the anxiety starts to talk to them and kind of start to give them reasons of maybe why school's going to be scary or why they shouldn't go. And so being able to prep the night before, you know, if it's taking a shower the night before, making sure the backpack is ready. So that way the morning doesn't seem as like chaotic or stressful, because hopefully then the routine is just going to be possibly waking up, doing a few of those hygiene, you know, eating breakfast, gathering their things and maybe then, you know, leaving for the morning so then it's not so stressful. And so those are some strategies sort of right off the bat to start the first, you know, week, 2 weeks, but things that you can keep going all year long.
All right, so we talked about some things that we can do, you know, prior to the school year starting as well as during the school year. So I'm just going to kind of tag along with strategies to continue to practice throughout the school year. So one of the things that I hear as an adolescent therapist from parents is, you know, I'll ask them how their day was and they said fine or bad or good, but they won't elaborate too much more than that. So one of the suggestions that tends to help, not always, but can be helpful, are using more open-ended questions. So an open-ended question tends to be a little bit more narrow and would encourage longer answers, whereas a closed-ended question such as how was your day might encourage more short, succinct answers. So an example of an open-ended question that I always recommend is asking something like, you know, what were 2 high points and 2 low points of your day today? Or what was something that was challenging and something that you felt successful at? So just kind of trying to open up a little bit more communication that way to get a little bit more of an idea of how the school day went. Just as Laura had also discussed kind of going over goals and expectations, I just want to highlight that it can be really helpful to write these things down. You know, having a conversation about it is really powerful, but I think, you know, including your teen in the conversation to really find out what their goals are for both daily and quarterly or semesterly are as well. Expectations can look like, you know, waking up on time, you know, making it to school, doing some schoolwork after school, maybe engaging in an extracurricular activity. Versus more long-term might be, you know, maybe there's a class that your teen is feeling a little bit more anxious about or is a little more challenging. Is there a specific grade that they want to strive for, or is there a goal related to like getting help? Or even outside of academics, maybe a goal is to join an extracurricular and get more involved socially. So really just kind of opening up the conversation with them included so that they feel like they have a say in what some of their expectations are, tends to set parents and teens up for success. Along with those goals or expectations, I always encourage rewards. So positive reinforcement, you know, rewarding the behaviors that are helpful. So that can be something that's really simple, if you will, like in the anxiety program, the kids love stickers. So if they do their treatment assignments, which is a part of the program, they get a sticker every day. So it could be something as simple as a sticker or a coffee if you're, you know, if stickers are not cool. Something like that that's maybe a little bit smaller and fits that goal or expectation. And then also think about, you know, what could they earn long term? If they've been completing their goals and completing their expectations for a week, a month, is there something that's motivating that they can work towards? And again, including all of this in the conversation with them could be helpful because they know what's going to be most rewarding and most motivating for them. I'm emphasizing the writing it down part because I have seen many a time where they have the conversation, parents and teens have the conversation, and then like in the thick of a difficult moment, it's hard to remember what those expectations are, what those rewards are. So, you know, just writing it down or typing it up to have it accessible is a helpful strategy. Along with that, as Laura had mentioned, you know, making yourself familiar with your teen supports at school. I think there can be a lot of confusion sometimes between academic support versus more emotional support. So as Laura said, again, you know, become familiar with these people prior to like a crisis or an intense moment, so that your teen is familiar with them in advance. This can look like visiting the school's website. A lot of times under like the staff section, they'll say, you know, if your last name is this through this, this is your social worker, this is your counselor. So it can be something like that. It can be sending them an email, giving them a phone call, maybe having your teen send them an email if they'd be willing to do that, just again to kind of put a name to a face ahead of actually needing them. And then also, attending as many school events as possible can be a good way to gain exposure to the school building in general. If the school building is anxiety-provoking, doing these, you know, sports events, plays, clubs or activities, those can be a really great way to gain exposure in a way that's maybe more appealing to your teen. As well as for parents too. It can be really helpful to kind of get the lay of the land at the school building.
All right, thank you. All right, so then for our next objective, so those were some strategies that can help, and so now we're going to talk a little bit about when to recognize when anxiety about school becomes a problem. We did have a question come in talking about the mental health absences that are allowed these days and how to help them know when they really need them. And I think this objective is really going to help us answer that. So we'll go through this objective and then we can visit back to this question again. So really, anxiety at the very core of it is really about the anticipation of a future threat. And so what does threat mean? Threat is a really broad term. It could be anything from something that's physically dangerous, so life or death threatening, or it could just be anything from somebody a teen that is looking to perhaps get into a certain college and needs to have a certain GPA, and then that is being threatened if a certain class is very hard. And so there's also a social threat that can happen too, especially in middle schools and high school. I think that part of with anxiety is that I think we often think about the fight or flight system. That comes up a lot. But when we're thinking of the fight or flight system, we're thinking of these kind of dangerous situations that, again, are life-threatening. But for a middle schooler, I mean, a grade schooler too, but more in middle school and high school, being ostracized by the group is just as sort of dangerous from our brain's perspective than something that's life or death, because oftentimes our brain naturally wants us to be a part of the group. And so although maybe something's happening at school that's more social related, they might be responding to it as a life or death because of this piece of like social connection and being a part of the group. And so anxiety serves to motivate and protect us. It's very important that we have it. It helps us to try to steer clear of unpleasant consequences. But what can happen is that if an anxiety turns into anxiety disorder, then what can happen is that avoiding some of those unpleasant consequences also then avoids us living the life that we want. And so that's really when anxiety turning into an anxiety disorder, that's when it becomes a problem. So that last bullet point there is when it interferes with our daily functioning, when it lasts beyond the difficult circumstance, and or occurs with everyday situations that there's no factual threat exists. So again, sort of that future piece, but what if? So something's not actually happening now, it's just the mind is worried about something happening. Anxiety is a very common experience. It's the most common mental illness in America. And so Kristen and I could go on for an hour about how, we're on a mission for people to appreciate their anxiety and be able to recognize it, see how that is actually really helpful, have some more compassion for their own anxiety, because our anxiety just wants to keep us safe. and again, safe from emotional threats as well as physical threats. But then, to go back to the question about how to really know to when to use those mental health days, I think it's going to be a part of that bottom when we're seeing a pattern perhaps, where it is now when it's interfering with our daily activity. So if it's interfering with eating, if it's interfering with our sleep hygiene, if it's interfering with the hobbies that we're doing, maybe that is going to be a day that we need to take off. But we don't want to just take off and do nothing. We want to take off to do something very proactive for us, something that is really going to hopefully reignite, sort of move us towards our values, move us towards the life we want. And so sometimes, we get concerned that these mental health days are days that we're just staying at home and maybe playing video games, for 8 hours. And it's not that there's anything wrong with video games, we just want to balance it. And so I think those are the patterns to sort of look for when we're looking at when we should use those mental health days, and to know, to have the teen recognize that as well, that they're starting to maybe feel really tired, that even if they are sleeping, it still feels very restless at night, or, they're waking up a lot, but they're falling back to sleep. Those kind of things that have a tendency to happen if they're just not feeling as motivated to go, and it's starting just to become this pattern.
All right. So thank you, Laura. Now, kind of stemming off of that, I wanted to kind of go over some of the most common physical anxiety symptoms that have come up both in program and in our everyday lives too, just kind of normalizing some of these symptoms. And so while I won't go through and read them all, I wanted to just take a second to just kind of come together, and if you would in the chat, share maybe how anxiety shows up for you, what's most common in your body, as well as what you might notice in your teen. So you guys can just kind of put that in the chat there so we can see.
My anxiety's personal favorite is like a chest discomfort. It just starts to feel sort of heavy. It starts to feel like there's pressure in there, not necessarily like someone's sitting on my chest as much as just like this pressure in there. That's my sign that I'm starting to enter that world, and then it can kind of advance from there and get to stomach aches.
Heck yeah. Yeah. Mine tends to be racing heart, feeling like I can actually literally hear my heartbeat. And then like you had noted, or like you had said, Laura, how it's kind of like a domino effect, then next my face feels flushed too. So let's see, I got some answers here. I've got sleep problems, stomach aches, heartbeats fast, face gets hot, lightheaded, nervous stomach aches, pain or illness type symptoms. Yeah, stomach aches, chest tightness, it looks like. Yeah, so any other ones before I move on? Bring on the anxiety symptoms. Voice quivers. Yes, I can relate to that one. Yeah, so just kind of working with the teens. Oh, it looks like my 17-year-old son attended Linden Oaks. Let's see. Some school refusal. Okay. All right. Looks like there's a question. So we'll get back to that one. Headaches, muscle tension, sleep problems. Yeah. So like I was saying, as the therapist, there were 3 symptoms that I tend to hear most often. Physical symptoms, I should say. Number 1, it seems that even in the chat, this is pretty common, is stomach aches. And then another one is fidgeting. And then the rapid heart rate tends to show up as well. And so one of the things that we like to do to kind of empower the teens and to help them kind of understand their bodies, and really the adults in program too, but kind of understand their bodies. Processes behind the symptoms. So going off of those three most common symptoms that I had discussed, I thought it would be kind of fun to go over the reasoning behind why our body is reacting that way when the fight or flight system is activated. So starting with the heart palpitations, our body starts to speed up our heart rate so that we can send energy and nutrients to the rest of our muscles to prepare to take action. Same with our stomach aches or kind of butterflies or kind of that feeling of a pit in your stomach. That's because the digestive process kind of takes a back seat. It's our body's like, hey, wait a second, that's not as important as our heart beating or our lungs breathing. So our digestion can stop to send extra nutrients and resources to the rest of our muscles and body. That's also why diarrhea, constipation might show up. It's because that digestive system has kind of gotten all wonky or out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fidgeting, same thing with kind of relating it back to the heartbeat, that can kind of send more energy to our muscles to make our tend to be a little shaky or restless. So this can look like foot tapping, you know, that restless knee where it seems to never stop and it gets higher and higher, or even restless like fingers fidgeting with our hands or our hair. So those are some of the reasons, some of the process behind those symptoms, and it can be helpful to have that knowledge about ourselves so that, as Laura had mentioned, we have a little bit more compassion, more appreciation for the reason for anxiety, really, and what it does to serve our bodies.
Yeah, stomach aches is the number one. I think it has been for the entire 13 years that I've been at Linden Oaks.
Yeah, and that one, along with I thought I saw in the chat the illness type symptoms, those can be really challenging because it's hard to differentiate then, is this anxiety or is this, am I sick? And so, you know, just validating that can be confusing, but noticing if it's a pattern or maybe it comes up, you know, when summer's over and we're starting to head back to school, or when there's a project or a presentation, you know, maybe having that kind of just mental note of, oh, wait a second, I'm starting to notice a pattern.
All right, so some sources for some school anxiety. So this is a little bit of a strategy too to helping like with the first objective as well, because these might be some red flags to look out for maybe. So like new situations or transitions. So if you have like a grade schooler going to the middle school going to high school, that could be a place. It doesn't mean it's going to be a source of anxiety for everybody, but it's just something to look at. You know, social anxiety is a huge part, so worrying about being judged by others or doing performance anxiety, so doing speeches, doing group work, being in front of other people, needing to go up to the whiteboard. Academic difficulties, we have a lot of kids in our anxiety program that have a lot of anxiety about grades and GPA. In college, we have like 7th graders worried about college because they're thinking that far ahead. Separation from loved ones, my anxiety's personal favorite. Fear of having a panic attack, or like fear of being embarrassed in front of other people. Long periods away from school, so summer break is a really big one. You know, we haven't been there. I don't, you know, if any of the you know, parents that are on if you work or, you know, if you go on vacation. You know, for me, even if I take off, I'm not exactly sure what I'm walking back into. There's some anxiety there. You know, if I took off of work for 2 full months the way our teens do for school, like I would absolutely be anxious coming back to see what's new and what's happening. And so these are all some of the sources. So if there's any of these, again, kind of at the beginning, it's the beginning of the school year, this might be things to look out for. And then throughout the school year, if any of these things sort of come up, if, like, let's say a teacher goes on maternity leave, and so now there's going to be a new teacher, that might be something to, you know, keep a little ear out for, because these are the things that may cause some anxiety.
All right. And so with those red flags, with those points or common causes of anxiety, it's normal for teens, kids of any age, to want to avoid some of that discomfort that comes along with those high stress situations. So these are just a couple of the signs that you might notice, some of the behaviors that could result because of those triggers. And as we touched on, there can be intense physical sensations like stomach aches or headaches, leaving class or asking to go home. One of the things that I hear from parents the most is, I get texts all throughout the day, you know, can you pick me up? Can you pick me up? I'm not feeling well. I promise I'll go to school tomorrow. So, you know, frequent texting and abundant texting like that. Maybe frequent trips to the guidance office or nurse's office. Being unwilling to engage in hobbies or extracurriculars, struggles with concentration, seeking reassurance from, it doesn't just have to be parents, it can be from friends, it can be from school supports, it can be from guardians or parents, not participating in class activities, increased fidgeting or a hard time sitting still or failing to turn in homework. So these are just some of the common ones that we have seen, but I'm curious to hear from you guys. What are some of the other behaviors that you have noticed from your teen that they might be doing as a result of anxiety, so a way to avoid some of the discomfort that comes with anxiety-provoking situations? So you can type that in the chat. Laura, do you have anything that you noticed in Jake, in your son?
So interestingly enough, one of the questions that came up is when the response is sort of, I don't want to talk about it. But for me, Jake is it's fine, and I don't get much from it. And so that is where, that's what I see from Jake, my son, is just that sort of, I don't want to talk about it, you know, same as the question kind of coming in, asking for suggestions about, you know, when that comes up. And, you know, sometimes what I've done with my son when that happened is I've asked him to draw it. You know, maybe it's hard to find the words. Can you draw it for me? You know, you can either draw like an outline of a person too, or you can get that on Google, but like show me if they really struggle with like what's happening in the body. So like, you know, what's going on? Can you color it? This body outline, like where is the anxiety located? Or again, they can just like draw a picture of it because they're just having a hard time finding the words. Maybe even picking a song. You know, can they find a song to kind of emulate how they feel about going to school? Some lyrics that work with it, or a movie, a TV show that maybe they relate to. Have they ever seen something, you know, in a TV show or a movie where you kind of felt like it? I think, too, sometimes sharing, and I try to be as live as I can with that, too, of, you know, something that I really struggled with today, XYZ, you know, because I think that can really show, too, of that it's okay, that kind of back to your questions of the, you know, two highs and two lows. Like, we all have highs and we all have lows, and we can share those too. We can be role models to share that we can have tough things and still stay at work or still stay at school or still stay out wherever we are. And so those are just a few suggestions of what I do with my son when I get the fine, or I don't know, I get that a lot too. I don't know.
Oh. Yeah, those are good ones.
We get some answers.
I think we just got one.
Withdraw from class, head down. Yeah, withdrawing from class, yeah, head down, that's a big one. Yeah, maybe you won't talk to me if I don't give you eye contact. We get that in the anxiety program as well, from the adults too, not just the adolescents.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone, all right. So our last objective, so some skills to help your teen and you manage school anxiety. So I just want to quickly kind of point out that we understand that these things are hard. It is hard to tell your kid to go to school when they have a headache and they're crying, you know, and if they have separation anxiety, they're probably have their arms wrapped around you. You know, we know that it's very hard. It is hard for us too in program. You know, we run a partial hospitalization program where they're with us 5 hours a day, or 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. And so obviously you're with them 24/7, you know, so we're only getting a small glimpse, you know, but you know, we get it. We have to practice these skills just as much. So all of these skills that we teach our kids and the teens in our programs, we practice too in the moment, because it's very hard to watch someone suffer. And then as a parent, you're watching someone you love that you said you would, that your goal is to make them happy, and now they're like walking into school crying. So we do understand that, and again, all of these skills are just as much as for us as adults that it is for the teens. So we're going to talk about two groups of skills. I'm going to talk about life skills. Kristen's going to talk about crisis skills. And so life skills are the ones that we call in our program because these are skills that we believe every single person on the planet can practice to kind of improve their daily functioning. So no one needs to necessarily have an anxiety disorder, depression. And so the goal is always in these situations. So when we're talking about low to moderate anxiety, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, we're talking maybe like 1 to 6, 1 to 7, depending upon, the person's level of tolerance. But when we're in these, we will always encourage people to stay in the situation, to not, our mind, because again of that fight or flight, is going to say, run away. And we want to start teaching our anxiety that we can manage this. We can experience this anxiety, what happens for us 1 to 7. So if it's some stomach aches, if it's some fidgetiness, if it's some hypervigilance, that we can experience that. So then our program is 6 hours a day for 5 days, and the average patients are with us for about 4 to 5 weeks. So that's how long it takes us to teach all of this. So we're just giving you probably 5% of all the skills that are out there too. So we'll give you some resources in the end if you like some of these things. But here are some of the options for what we call life skills, because again, it's all the time we can practice these. So probably one of the most classics is breathing exercises. We kind of hear that everywhere. We picked this one because this is the kids' favorite, always the kids' favorite. So it's 4 square breathing, and it's just following, breathing in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, and repeating it 4 times. It's very helpful for someone who overbreathes, because again, like Kristen was saying, if someone's overbreathing, then the heart needs to beat faster to keep it balanced. So we want to keep that down, but this is also helpful for people that might hold their breath at the same time, because then it's kind of forcing them to breathe in and then hold it and breathe out to help them with that too. And there's so much research, so much literature out there that talks about how breathing can really help calm the body, get us present so that we're not so far in that future thinking that we have. Willing hands is one of our favorites as well. And at first, we sometimes get feedback of sort of like, what is this? But again, when you're looking at it from a life skills perspective, that we're trying to build the tolerance up, that Willing Hands is this idea that we're accepting reality. So again, because anxiety is a part of life, that we're accepting reality with our body. And a lot of the times, like Kristen was saying, we have a tendency to start to tense up because of that anxiety. And so we make fists because we're getting ready to fight. Our body, our legs, our arms are getting ready to go, to either run away or to fight. So Willing Hands is the opposite of that. And so it's taking what the anxiety wants to do with the body, and then it's opening your hands up. And it's a skill that someone can practice everywhere, in the classroom, even if you're standing up in front of the room because you're giving a speech. But it's about noticing that you're clenching your hands, or that your shoulders are up high, and kind of keeping your palms up. You just have them in your lap, and relaxing the fingers. And then sort of what this does is that our mind and our bodies want to be in sync. So if we actively kind of calm our body, it's sending signals to our brain that we are safe, and that we don't need to be responding to this fight or flight that we think is happening for us. So then this kind of leads us into this idea of what we call dropping anchor, which is kind of taking that up a notch. Because what this allows us to do then is take it to the next step and acknowledging those thoughts and feelings. So again, this is something my son's not a fan of. That's why he says fine and I don't know. And so this is something I need to work with him on, is like acknowledging what those thoughts and feelings are, and then connecting with your body. There's an acronym of ACE to help you remember it. Connecting with your body. So again, we have a tendency when we're anxious, we start to sit to the end of our seat and our legs are jumping up and down, and we start to look around a lot. And that same kind of idea with Willing Hands is like sitting all the way back, putting your feet on the ground, possibly even pushing your fingertips together or pushing it on a table. And it's about connecting to your body for that same reason, to tell our brain we are not in danger. And then we want to engage in the environment. And a way to do that is to notice maybe just 5 things you never noticed before, because again, a lot of the times we're what-ifing, we're focused on these thoughts, or we're focused on these very uncomfortable things in our body. So if we can kind of get out of our mind and our body and into what's happening in the present, it can quiet down that anxiety. So noticing 5 things we never noticed before, or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is one of the favorites as well. That's why we picked all of these. And so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is noticing 5 things that you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. And you can do this in any order you really want to. But again, it just gets you activated. And again, we don't need anything for it. So not that there's anything wrong with fidgets. Fidgets are very popular too, but we really like to equip people, especially even our parents, us as adults, with skills that we can practice without needing things for, so that we call them kind of like back pocket skills, like they're always there. And so these are just a few of the skills that can be helpful. And we know there's a lot in this PowerPoint, so if you're interested in a copy of the PowerPoint, you can put the email in the chat, and we can email it to you so that you have a copy of all of this that we're teaching today. And now I'm going to pass it over to Kristen to talk about what's called crisis skills.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, so as we touched on this kind of idea of an anxiety ladder, so this idea that anxiety can build and there's different zones, that crisis zone, again, will look a little bit different for everybody, but it tends to be that level where our logical thinking kind of shuts down. It's hard to answer questions. Conversations can be difficult. So the anxiety gets so intense that we're unable to really kind of think clearly in that moment. So it is helpful to practice a different set of skills, but ultimately we want to, as Laura had touched on, kind of build our tolerance to those anxiety-provoking situations. And rather than just saying, we don't want you to leave the classroom, it can be helpful to practice this kind of idea of 5 crisis skills for 5 minutes each. And so in program, we call it kind of 5 for 5, kind of quick and easy. And there's a couple of different categories. There's like soothing crisis skills and more distracting crisis skills. And then even further, mind and body soothing and distraction skills. So I'm just going to go over some of the more physical crisis skills that help to change your body chemistry quickly. And one of them is using an ice pack. So kind of the by the book way is to put the ice pack on your eyes and cheekbones and hold your breath for 20 seconds. But truthfully, we see our kids sometimes even hold it in their hands or put it on their neck. It tends to be a really helpful one to slow the heart rate and slow the breathing. When you're in that intense, heightened state of anxiety, your heart rate is going, so you're going to feel hot. So it can be a good one to cool off your body and kind of shock your senses. Intense exercise is another one. These are short bursts of exercise, and the idea is that we're trying to channel some of that physical energy that anxiety might show up as sometimes through a quick burst of exercise. So this can be anything. It can be burpees, it can be a brisk walk, it can be jumping jacks, sit-ups, push-ups. I had a patient once who used Just Dance, the game Just Dance, as like their intense exercise skill. So that can be really helpful at getting rid of some of that physical energy. And then we also have one called progressive muscle relaxation that can be really helpful to help ground the body if you have more, or if your teen has more physical anxiety symptoms. And the goal is kind of about recognizing where in the body tension lies by actually tensing each muscle group, starting from your toes up to your head for about 5 seconds and then releasing it. And it's just, again, this idea of kind of eliminating or kind of getting rid of channeling some of this physical energy. There's, just for the sake of time, I won't get into it too much more, but there are tons of resources on YouTube. If you are to type in progressive muscle relaxation, you will get a slew of guided practices. So that's a really helpful one. And then moving on to more of that mind category, what I mean by that is maybe there's more mental anxiety symptoms showing up. So ruminating thoughts, thought cycles, you know, constant reassurance seeking. This can be a really helpful to kind of channel some of that mental energy. So just a couple of things that we have thought of that are, you know, can be helpful are word searches, extreme dot to dot. So we've seen those ones when we were little to kind of help us with our fine motor skills. These are way more intense. You can find some on Google. Or what we call more non-object skills, so not needing any physical items, could be counting backwards from 100 by threes, just something to kind of focus our attention on. Not everything is helpful for everyone, so just keeping in mind that there might be a little bit of kind of guess and check that needs to happen to find the blend of helpful skills. And then the last one is the ABC game, which, again, for time's sake, I'm just going to briefly go over. The ABC game is a fan favorite. It's basically picking a theme and choosing a word that begins with each letter of the alphabet within that theme. And so this example here is restaurant. So as you can see, there's an example for each letter of the alphabet. This can be done with your teen, so you know, maybe parents or guardian or support system can say one that starts with A, teen would say B, so on and so forth. Or the teen can do it on their own, writing it down or even mentally. So there's a couple different ways, but it does tend to be a helpful one. Again, I know we kind of rushed through these last couple of slides, so if you would like a copy of this with all the information, just put your email in the chat. I think so. Laura, I was having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, so I'm just wondering if...
With the book recommendations?
Yes. Oh, we're good now.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know what happened.
No,
So these are just the
okay.
book recommendations. Again, if you ask for the PowerPoint, you'll be able to get them. I think we asked for all, I think we answered all the questions in the chat, right, Kristen? I don't think we missed any.
No, yeah, I think
Okay. I don't see
all
any
the rest
coming
of them
in.
that I see are requests for the PowerPoint.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. And Kristen, I wasn't sure if you had anything else to add on to that, but I also wanted to thank everyone who was able to join us today. And I will be opening up the poll on the right-hand side of your screen. So if you just take a minute to answer those questions, and again, feel free to please drop in any of the emails that would like a copy of the PowerPoint. And then if we did miss any questions, or if you do have any other questions that you would like to ask for our speakers, please definitely feel free to drop those in the chat as well. Laura and Kristen can answer those, and then we can send them out when we send out the presentation as well.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Alrighty, well,
thank you,
again, I just wanted to
everybody.
thank everyone, and again, thank you to our speakers. And then we'll have the poll open for about 5 minutes. So feel free to get that started. And again, if it doesn't open up on your side, no worries. I know there was some kind of technical difficulty, so I really do appreciate everyone's patience with everything. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.